Hello and welcome to Tapcast, Industry Voices on Vertical Farming. I'm your host, Afshin Siddiqui. And today we have a truly special guest, someone who has been in the forefront of reshaping the urban agriculture landscape and also pushing the boundaries of CEA, which is Control Environment Agriculture. So you might know him as a global leader in urban agriculture consulting, but beyond that, he's a visionary who is turning food production into a more sustainable and tech-driven scalable reality. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm beyond excited to welcome an advisor, a strategist, and a thought leader who has helped countless vertical farming ventures thrive across the globe. So he is none other than Henry Gordon Smith, the founder and CEO of Agritecture. Welcome to Tapcast, Henry. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Afshin. I'm doing great. I appreciate that very generous introduction, and it's great to be here today.
Yeah. So, Henry, I had the privilege of first crossing paths with you back in 2020, at a time when the world was grappling with the unprecedented challenges of COVID-19. And it was then you were uh, in our first edition of virtual global vertical farming show. You were a panelist in that, and you share your profound insights at a time when the world was evaluating the future of food, right? So since then, I have watched with immense admiration that you have been traversing the globe, exploring cutting edge vertical farms, shaping policy dialogues, and advising stakeholders on the transformative strategies for the CEA, how they can grow their business. So, just walk us through your journey, Henry, and how it started. Where is it now? And other than being an architect, agritech, what else are you interested in? I know you are a creative person. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, my story should be inspiring to some people because all great things start small. In college, my undergraduate degree in political science, I had a visiting professor that was an expert on water wars and water scarcity. And his lectures inspired me to get involved in trying to respond to the global climate crisis. And I was looking at water primarily, and then I stumbled into food. And in order for me to explore my interest in food, I wanted to do that through a blog called Agritecture. And this was a blog that I started in college, and it was about reporting on the emergence of urban farming enabled by new technologies like greenhouse technologies, hydroponics, and vertical farming. And at this time in 2011, there really was not a lot of information. So I had to sort of find my own information and share it. And it was a privilege because Agritecture became a very popular blog. It became the place that people would go to learn about the latest companies and technologies, innovations, and events. I started running some workshops related to this. How do you plan these farms? I did about 11 of those workshops. I co-founded the Association for Vertical Farming. I resigned from that in 2017. And I did a number of things to try and build the industry. It wasn't until 2014 that I actually formally was really working in the industry. When I finished my master's degree, I had volunteered in some greenhouses. I had gotten a certificate in food security and urban agriculture. And people started requesting consulting from my blog. And sort of this light bulb moment went off that people needed professional guidance independent of technology, right? You go to a technology provider, they'll tell you how their technology works. They'll tell you how the business works overall, but they're not going to do your market research for you. They're not going to help you develop your business model, and they're going to be pushing their technology. There's nothing really wrong about that. But for some clients, they want to take a step back and explore the sort of all the possibilities so that they can reduce risk and understand the sector before they make an investment. And that's what Agritecture does primarily. We provide technology agnostic feasibility studies for all kinds of urban farms, controlled environment agriculture farms, and now even climate smart agriculture projects around the world. So far, we've done over 300 projects in 50 countries. So we're very global despite our small team and base in New York City, and we are spread around the world. Now, in addition to feasibility studies, we provide policy advice, so comprehensive plans for cities to do urban agriculture, regional food systems planning. We provide due diligence for investors when they're considering investments. We review technology companies and their technologies, and we give them market strategy to enter new markets. And we also work with architects on master planning of new cities. We still do a lot of free content through our blog as part of that DNA, constantly producing content, webinars, etc. And we do some sponsored content with key companies that want to provide that. Now, one more thing is in 2020, when this sort of crisis happened with COVID, we lost a lot of our opportunity to meet people in person and to help them. So we decided to launch a digital product called Agritecture Designer, which is currently free right now. If you go to design.agritecture.com, you can use the promo code Plan Your Farm. And this is the world's first farm planning software. So you can estimate the CapEx, OpEx, yield, water, energy, labor of any greenhouse or vertical farm on Earth by simply filling in certain information about your objectives and the location you're at. And it has a lot of amazing features and online classes as well. So it's a great way to get up to speed and have sort of a quick estimation tool. So that's really what I spend a lot of time on, as you can imagine, is managing my team, speaking at events, creating content, consulting amazing clients. But you asked me what else I'm interested in. Well, I definitely love swimming. I love nature. I like dancing. And I just like to have a good time.
See, I was right. You're a creative person. That's great to know. And the application that you were talking about, that people at any place in the globe can actually check the operational costs, the any financial costs that are related to opening a vertical farm or starting a greenhouse business. I think they can get the right kind of help from Agritecture. So now, Henry, that you also mentioned that you have worked with so many businesses, you have worked with governments as well, and startups across the world, so helping them navigate the complex world of vertical farming and urban agriculture. Let's start with the big picture. What are the key focus areas that you see driving the scalability of vertical farming globally?
Well, I think one of the key things is the demand for local, right? There's sort of been a global awareness that reducing the distance from farm to plate means we have less waste and, above all, better flavor and better nutritional content in the product. There's concerns about supply chain threats, whether it was from COVID or climate change or the invasion of Ukraine. These have all been signals that the system we depend upon in a global society is fragile. So growing certain food locally can be very important. So, that sort of trend existed long before vertical farming and has accelerated in recent years. And vertical farming as a very high-tech form of growing, in particular, certain types of greens and herbs, and in some cases, strawberries, sort of steps in as a possible way to grow food locally and as close to the customer as possible. I mean, you can place these in cities, you can do larger scale ones outside of cities. And that's really what that represents. But again, greenhouses also near cities have experienced a lot of growth because they can also supply this year-round product. For suppliers as well, it's not just about the sustainability question or the nutrition, it's about consistency, right? So if you have a bad weather in California or Arizona, water scarcity where a lot of the leafy greens come from that go to the rest of the United States, just as an example, you're going to have a change in price, a change in availability. And retailers, more and more retailers want this. And what was exciting at Indoor AgCon, the event that just happened in the US, is that we've learned that 20% of the packaged leafy greens in the northeast of the US are now being supplied by controlled environment agriculture. Now, that's really massive growth over a 10-year period, and we expect that it will accelerate. But now we're really talking about a disruption of the current status quo. And so I think that consumers and retailers alike want local, and this technology allows local to be possible.
Right. So talking about this is fascinating actually that so much of the leafy greens are through vertical farming produce, especially in the US.
EA. So actually the majority of that is going to be greenhouses. So vertical farming is one way to grow these greens year round. And some of that is from vertical farms. But to be clear, most of that is coming from new greenhouses that have been developed, little leaf farms, bright farms, but also some vertical farms like 80 acres are really making an impact on this.
Perfect, perfect. So I would also like to touch on the aspects of technology other than being the local. I think vertical farming is a sector which has intensive technology that is involved in it. So we have seen rapid innovations, evolutions in automation, AI, robotics, and so many data analytics. So how are these innovations reshaping the industry, and what excites you the most about the future of agtech?
Well, I think in the case of vertical farming, right, these are very heavy tech-focused businesses. There's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of lights, climate control. The whole purpose of these vertical farms is to get ultimate control to produce the ultimate product. So that means I'm going to want to embed a lot of sensors and cameras, throughout my system. That also means I'm going to want to utilize automation technologies so it can be easier to manage that operations. And these are just more common as an embedded part of this type of agriculture than other types of agriculture. And all of that produces significant amounts of data that needs to be analyzed. So machine learning and artificial intelligence is playing I would say, a greater role in vertical farming just inherently from its sort of tech foundation. Now, greenhouses are not always so high tech, but we are seeing spillover from the vertical farming sector and all the IoT and AI developments across ag tech that are going into greenhouses that are making them smarter. And there's a range, right? People might only use climate control systems and some data analysis related to that, or just to control their vents or their lights. And some people go as far as using this for inventory management, managing robots that can start to harvest crops, various parts of business planning and yield projections and pest management. So we're starting to see more and more opportunities, especially spilling over into the greenhouse sector that is much larger than the vertical farming sector, to really see these technologies in action. What am I excited about in the future? I mean, look, we've been through some hard times, in particular in vertical farming, where the most well-funded vertical farms in the world have almost all gone bankrupt. And I've written a lot about this. I predicted it in 2021, and I've written a lot about why this happened. And a lot of it is because of hype and dishonesty, right? There's an incentive to sort of exaggerate in order to get Silicon Valley dollars and to be perceived as a tech company versus a farming company. Now, as we sort of are hung over from this disappointment, we start to have new veterans, people who have been through this journey with companies, people have seen technology work or not, people who have seen investment strategies fail, people who have seen disappointment occur. They don't want that anymore, but they still want to be in the industry. And so what they do is they contribute in a more honest way. We're seeing people moving from one company to another. We're seeing mergers and acquisitions. We're seeing industry events not just try to talk about the basic things like, oh, we save 95% less water, or this is more sustainable, without getting to the details of the trade-offs that exist between energy, water, and pesticide use, right? The complexity of it. So we're seeing more nuance involved in it. So what I'm most excited about is a more mature industry as we sort of get through that hype cycle and we're moving into the slope of enlightenment after the trough of disillusionment that I wrote about in my 2021 Ag Funder article. This is the exciting opportunity that we can to expand that market share, not just in the Northeast, but around the world, of how much of these greens or how much of other products that can be grown in CEA are grown in these year-round, pesticide-free, more localized operations that are tech.
Sorry.
No
So,
worries.
absolutely. So now I would like to shift a little bit of our focus, especially on the Middle East market, the
Great.
Gulf region. So, with all this innovation taking place, with the failed examples of vertical farms, we are also seeing a growing investor interest, especially in Gulf region. So, tell us from your experience, what are the biggest opportunities for investors and entrepreneurs looking to enter the space?
So I've worked in the GCC in particular for the last 9 years on a variety of agritecture projects across policy, investment, due diligence, and feasibility studies for entrepreneurs. So I have some familiarity with it. Now, obviously, there's some variations between the GCC states. So there's some nuance there that we can get into. But speaking broadly, there really are few regions in the world where vertical farming, not just CA in general, can have a huge impact. And that's really, of course, because of the factors of the extreme climate and the lack of arable land and the lack of options to do that. So you think about the risk sort of profile of a set of countries that are importing food, again, in this context of a more volatile supply chain and climate environment. The incentive to create consistency and resiliency and localized food security is very high. So pretty much every GCC government has an initiative to say, let's grow more food locally. And vertical farming has been promoted and put forward as one of the ways to do that. And look, there is some success to note. We have the largest vertical farm in the world in the UAE. I think it's a very exciting project, Bustanica, that's obviously partnered with Emirates. This is an example of some of the most common, I would say, and successful agriculture projects in the region where it's a public-private partnership, right? We know that government gets very involved in this sector as part of their initiatives, and they can own portions of companies or be backing different companies. So that's the benefit of that, is that it has government support, and that's going to lend itself to some subsidies and longevity that's needed to get this innovation to be proven in the region. But the downside of that is that the entrepreneurial spirit that exists with CEA vertical farming can be hampered a little bit. And that's because there's fears of, well, how am I going to compete with that? How am I going to compete with a government-owned business? And so what I think is really interesting is the innovation we see around that. One example is a vertical farm. I want to say the name right. Alalia, I believe is the name of it in Sharjah. And, I really like that because this
Al
is a
Alio Farms. Yeah.
Alalia Farms. Thank you. So, this is a family-owned vertical farming business, and they're growing unique crops that are not typical in vertical farms. Specifically, they grow in a specialty soil hybrid mix, and they're growing small onions and garlic. They're creating
Oh,
added value products out of it, like garlic salt, and they're targeting their direct community that actually can't source that product locally and wants that quality. This is what vertical farming is also about, the ability to get that control and grow something that other people can't locally. And I think that is a very exciting part of the entrepreneurial movement, is that people are really exploring what the diversity of expats that exist across the GCC need culturally and want food-wise, and leveraging these technologies. There's also really interesting challenges in the region, lack of skills in constructing these projects, operating them, and also the high costs of importing some of these technologies. I think, again, that farm represents an innovation where they're trying to build this at a lower cost and invent certain solutions to clean their system or automate their system without needing expensive, Dutch or US or Asian tech companies, but developing some of their localized innovation. I think the future of the region is going to be ideally some combination of stimulating that entrepreneurial growth that's so important, the innovation there, and some of these larger scale operations that are probably just going to work with some of the best in class technologies around the world. So if we have that mix there, we start to have a very interesting sort of mosaic of approaches. I will say that greenhouses also have great potential in the region. They have certain difficulties because there's less consistency, and the climate in the summer can be so difficult, and the water use from cooling can be so high. But we are seeing some ongoing innovations there, and greenhouses still do present interesting possibilities because you can get a wider variety of crops. So they're going to be a part of the mix. I think the part that's still missing in the GCC that could use a lot more attention is the existing farmers. The GCC has a really interesting mix of local farmers that are given land from the government, and these are often subsidized. They're often producing dates and not contributing to food security, and often overusing water and pesticides. So putting more energy and having more companies dedicated to working with the government and with these farmers to help the existing farming infrastructure to become more sustainable, which is not always going to be vertical farming or greenhouses, by the way. It's something that agritecture is particularly passionate about, and something we're working on in both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So this is an exciting new chapter for us, where we're learning more about, the wider food system, that greenhouses and vertical farms aren't the only thing we need, and that actually looking at existing farms versus just focusing on new farms is a really, really important way that we can transform food security and sustainable food in the region.
rightly said. And also, I've heard you talking about, out of all the places you have been to, UAE has a great potential in terms of vertical farming growth. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I think that there's a couple factors there, right? It's a relatively small country. Again, there's not a lot of land availability. There are raw water challenges. There's a commitment to tech innovation. There's a very clear food security strategy. So I think all of those are really going to push this forward. On the other hand, the population is relatively small if you compare it to Saudi Arabia. So, I get, when my clients ask me, hey, should I do a vertical farm growing leafy greens in the UAE? To be honest, I say you shouldn't. You should think about something differentiated that's not growing there already, because the market can get quite saturated with a large farm that's subsidized like Bustanica. So, I think we have to be cautious about how much we promote vertical farming in a market that's relatively small. But I think if you take a step back and you think about the Netherlands, right, as a small country that was able to produce so much and export it, you could see some exports coming out of the UAE potentially that would still be, in some senses, from a food miles perspective, more sustainable than other sources. And the UAE can think beyond just the food product and actually exporting technology as a Netherlands of the GCC, a Netherlands of the Middle East, a place where the best events happen, a place where the best research is happening, where technologies are evolving, where the companies start and they expand from. I mean, it's such an exciting business climate there, and it has such an advantage there over its neighbors that it can leverage that into this ag tech seed. I mean, again, I don't think it's doing that perfectly yet. I think more attention could be given to the smaller entrepreneurs and valuing them versus large announcements and large initiatives. Those small ones and the diversity of them, I think, is critical to a successful food system. And so I'd like to see a bit more encouragement on that. But I would say overall, the government and the private sector and the collaborations there on this topic, the retailers getting involved, are all very, very exciting for the UAE to continue its position as a leader in this subject in the region.
I completely agree with you. And I also feel that with the favorable business conditions in UAE, I think it has a potential to become a hub through which
Totally.
a lot of vertical farming business could be done further, including exports and technology provision.
Totally.
So you also touched on a very important aspect, which is government support and regional initiatives. So with food security being such a critical topic, how do you see vertical farming playing a role in ensuring sustainable food production for the Middle East?
Well, I sort of talked a little bit about, why it matters with the climate conditions, and the role it provides. I sort of highlighted that there's some limited crops that it can grow and some specialty crops that could make a meaningful impact. But again, this is just one piece of the overall food system and what's needed. I guess, just to build off your question a little bit, one of the gaps that I would really like to see filled is urban agriculture. We have really amazing cities and real estate projects that are developed all across the region. These are brand new cities. Agritecture provides master planning services, so we're now designing farms from the beginning with these new projects. And I would like to see more incentives and leadership on this topic. Right? Why are we building houses without the food needed to feed the people that live in them? We have to ask ourselves questions. Can a city really be smart and tech driven without agriculture? Can we really grow our cities, build another island, build another community, build another tower without really thinking about where the food and the water and the energy come from? I think food is a challenging sustainability question to look at, more challenging than energy and water. But it is so, so critical because it embodies the nexus of water, energy, waste, and food, which is really the key to unlocking sustainable urban development. So I'd like to see requirements that when developments are built, a percentage of that development has to have a space for urban agriculture in it, ideally tech-enabled urban agriculture because of the climate considerations there. I would like to see more examples and promotion of projects that do that. And I'd like to see more of an embrace of small scale farming at the school level, at the residential level, at the retail level, to show that how we can bring agriculture to our city is not just going to impact yield, but is actually going to impact other parts of what urban agriculture can provide: aesthetics that help us think more green and be inspired, education opportunities that can help us create a workforce for the future of this sector, marketing opportunities that can help drive more interest and demand for higher quality and more locally sourced foods, waste reduction because people just become more aware of the food system, and just overall tech evolution. We're talking about trying to localize technologies for this region. This could be a great way to leapfrog that and to catalyze this as sort of embedded part of the futuristic, modern, luxurious developments that we see across the region. Food, high quality, delicious, local, clean food is a luxury, is something that's part of the future and should be part of every single new development in every new city in the region.
Absolutely. Smart cities with which are farming inclusive. I think this is a game changer, especially for regions like Gulf. But while vertical farming presents like exciting opportunities, scaling up comes with its own set of challenges. Like you also initially mentioned about the farms that were failing. There are operational costs, there are regulatory hurdles, and consumer adoption. So, what advice would you give to those who are looking to overcome these barriers?
I mean, look, I'm a planning consultant, right? So I have a philosophy of, just more planning prevents poor performance. Proper planning prevents poor performance. So I think people get excited about the technology a lot, especially new entrants to the sector. Take a step back. Don't obsess over the technology. You have a lot of technology options. We can talk about technology all day, but you really should be obsessing over the market. Who's going to buy your product? How many people are there? How do they want it packaged? What's the competition? How are you going to brand your product? How are you going to get it to your customer? These are the areas where you should obsess because that's going to drive all of the revenue and all of the results for your business. And then you match your technology to the market. You don't try to match your market to your technology. That's not how it works. So I think people need to really change their thinking about this and planning, spending proper time with market research, business model development, engaging with potential customers, piloting your farm and testing product in the market. This is all part of what I mean of spending proper planning. Now, we understand that agritecture as a premium boutique consulting firm isn't for everyone. We work with the best and we love to work with more people, but we're a small team. So that's why we create our software product. It's a super low cost, now it's free way to do this planning that I've mentioned. It goes through the exact same steps that our feasibility studies at Agritecture go through. So the thing I want to encourage more is just take a step back and do this. There's literally a market research tool on the software where you can do your own market research and an algorithm will recommend the right price for the products you're selling. Then you can take those products and put it into your financial model and see what is your ROI going to be. So instead of being naive and excited about the tech and the lights and the robots, you start to be brought down to earth to what the real business case is. And again, we've made that cost so cheap, in the case right now, free, to get the basic information as part of our mission to help the whole industry rise up and just avoid making the same mistakes in the past. So proper planning is my advice. Take your time, plan it properly, and you'll have a much more viable business in the future.
That is wonderful advice. And I think with this, we have come to end of our today's conversation. So it has been an absolute pleasure reconnecting with you, Henry. And I'm sure your expertise over past these years will definitely be instrumental for others who are listening to our podcast. So before we wrap up, what's next for you and Agritecture? Any exciting things, any projects on the horizon?
Well, I'm in LA right now. I'm going to New York. I'm going to go to Toronto. I'm a judge for a really exciting competition called the Homegrown Innovation Challenge to grow berries year-round in Canada. So that's a really, really fun opportunity. I'll be doing the final judging with the other judges next week. And we're going to be announcing 4 teams that are going to win $5 million each to continue their journey to grow berries year-round. We just won a new project with a city in Ohio to do a comprehensive urban agriculture plan for that city. We are multiple months into a master plan for a new city in the Middle East and thinking about the food system, and that has a variety of vertical farms and greenhouses and other types of farms in it, which is really, really, really exciting. We have finished a feasibility study for a native tribe greenhouse. So native tribes in the United States in particular, they have access to water, but they actually have a lot of food security issues. We're very excited about that greenhouse, which will be a tomato greenhouse grown by these individuals for their community and strengthening economic development. So there's really so much. You can check out our portfolio or contact us if you want to learn more. But again, we're actively working around the world, and what a privilege it is to be part of responding to the climate crisis with this exciting technology.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we will be keeping an eye on all the things that you will be doing, your incredible work. So thank you once again, Henry, for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. But I'm hoping that you would also be attending the Global Vertical Farming Show, which is coming up again in September this year in Dubai. So
I would love to make it. You're putting me on the spot, but I would love to make it. We'll see. I'm going to be teaching at Columbia University a new course on climate smart agriculture. So I'm going to be traveling a little bit less as I focus on my students, but certainly I'll see if I can get someone from my team to go. It was a nice event when I went.
definitely. I will keep in touch with you to give you further updates about the event. So, thank you for sharing your valuable perspectives. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If while watching, if you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe our Tabcast on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Spotify. And we are, like I mentioned, Henry, where I'm inviting him to come at the Global Vertical Farming Show in September. Let's hope to see you there. Until next time, signing off. This is Afshin. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye bye.